Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Miss Nestore, and this is 10th grade American history. So today we are going to be talking about the Montgomery Bus Boycott. So this is the beginning of the civil rights movement. So we will be starting in the year 1955, and we will be moving into the year 1956. Okay, so before we begin, I wanted to pose a question to all of you. How would you feel if today I decided to stop giving homework to all of my students that had blue eyes? Just my students with blue eyes. How would you feel about this? How would somebody with blue eyes feel? Yeah, you would probably like this. What about somebody with brown eyes? How would you feel? Mhm. Yeah, you wouldn't like this. Is it fair? I'm the teacher, so I can make this rule, right? No, it's not fair. But why isn't it fair? Yeah, because you're not being treated the same. You're not being given the same amount of work. Can you do anything about the fact that you don't have blue eyes? No, you can't. Not really. Does it make you any different to have different color eyes? No, it doesn't. Okay, so I want you guys to think about that as we move into today's lesson. Okay, so we're going to start with the word boycott. What does it mean to boycott something? So let's say I go to a local coffee shop every day. It's my favorite coffee shop, and every day I go there and I get my morning cup of coffee. Well, one day I go there and I see that they stopped using paper cups and instead they've switched to using styrofoam cups. Now, I care a lot about the environment, so I know that styrofoam is really bad. So I decide I'm no longer going to go there and buy my cup of coffee every day. Instead, I'm going to make coffee at home. I'm hoping that by taking away my business from this shop, that they will decide to switch back to paper cups. So I'm now boycotting my morning cup of coffee every day. So do you think that this business losing my one cup of coffee is going to make much of a difference? Maybe not. It's probably only a couple dollars. But what if half of their customers did this? Or even 3/4 of their customers? Yeah, they would maybe consider going back to paper cups. That's kind of what happened in the Montgomery Bus Boycott. So, how many of you have heard of Rosa Parks? Yeah, most of you have probably heard that name before. What was she famous for? What was she known for doing or not doing? Right. She was known for not giving up her seat on the bus. So, we talked about in last week's lesson, we talked about Jim Crow laws and how after the Civil War, these laws that were mainly implemented in the South, they were used to promote racial segregation. That word segregation. So, segregation means that whites and blacks were separated. It was this idea of separate but equal. They had separate schools, they had separate restaurants, they even had separate seating on the buses. Now, this was considered lawful because the idea was that they were still being treated equally. Well, as we're going to see today, that was not really the case. So, buses during 1955 in the South were segregated. African Americans and whites had separate seating. If a white person came onto the bus, they were allowed to ask an African American if they would give up their seat and move to the back of the bus. Now, what would happen if this person refused to do that? Well, Rosa Parks refused, and as a result, she was arrested. So news of her arrest started to spread around Montgomery, and the next day a bus boycott was called by the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, a young man named Martin Luther King Jr. Now, this is important because this was kind of the first major protest that Martin Luther King organized. We're going to see he becomes a really prominent leader of the civil rights movement, but this was kind of the first major thing that he did. Okay. So then I would continue to go through my slides. I would give examples of the bolded words. So I would give examples of nonviolent protest and what this did. I would talk more about how these people organized, the things that they did to keep the momentum going of the bus boycott. I would pause and ask questions. So the boycott continued for 381 days. That is a really long time. That's more than a year. How many of you walk to school? Not too many. Most of you take the bus or you ride with a parent or a sibling. Could you imagine if you had to walk to school every day for a whole year? What would that be like in the winter when it snows and it's really cold outside? Or even in the pouring rain? Yeah, that wouldn't be fun. And you would probably also have to get up earlier too, because it would take you longer to get to school. That's what these people did. They did this every day for more than a year. They were that dedicated to their cause. So, did this achieve change? A group of women represented by the NAACP, so the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, they had sued the city because they believed that these segregation laws actually violated the Constitution. So on December 20th, 1956, the Supreme Court upheld the ruling that segregating the buses was unconstitutional. So it violated the Constitution. Now, what do I mean by that? So in this instance, they found that this law violated the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment was one of the 3 amendments that passed after the Civil War. You had the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th. Under the 14th Amendment, it states that regardless of your race, your gender, your nationality, your ethnicity, you have equal protection under the law. That's why the idea of separate but equal was considered lawful. It was because even though they were separate, the idea was that they were still being treated equally. But as you can see here, the court actually found that they were not being treated equally. The bus system was not treating African Americans and whites equally. So therefore, it violated the Constitution, and this resulted in the buses now being integrated. So it led to a change in the law. They achieved a change. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to show you guys a picture, and I want you to look at the picture, and I want you to point out some of the things that you see. It is a picture of the bus boycott. Okay, so you ready? What do you see in this picture? Yeah, you see people riding their bikes. What else do you see? People are walking, yeah. What do you notice about the bus? Does it look like anybody's getting on the bus? No, it's pretty empty, isn't it? And what about the group of people? Is that a lot of people? It's a pretty big number of people, right? Yeah, so as you can see, a large group of these people came together and refused to ride the bus. So, did this achieve social change? What do you think? Yeah? Why do you think it achieved change? Right, because they changed the law, buses now had to be integrated. Do you think there were still people that didn't want the buses to be integrated? Yeah, there were people that wanted to keep the buses segregated. So even though the law changed, it didn't change everyone's attitudes. Now that's why the civil rights movement went on for more than a decade. It's because people didn't change their attitudes or opinions about these things overnight. And it took a long time for them to get any change in the law, too. Do you think that a nonviolent protest was the best approach? Yeah, why do you think it was the best? Yeah, because if somebody tried to do this through violence, they might not have been taken as seriously. And it probably wouldn't have led to any change, right? It wouldn't have really made a difference. But as we saw, the nonviolent protest took a very long time. They had to walk or ride their bikes for more than a year. It took a very long time for them to get any sort of change. However, though, they were able to achieve a change. Okay, so next I would do an activity. So I'm going to put the students in groups of about 2 to 3 people. I'm either going to use the popsicle stick method and do this randomly, or just put them in groups randomly. And I'm going to have them discuss, what is a social issue that you care about? Can you identify a problem in your community that you would like to change? And then what is a peaceful way that you can promote change in your community? So going back to my coffee cup boycott example, if I got a large group of the customers to boycott this coffee shop, we probably would be able to get them to go back to paper cups because they would be losing business. They would be hurting financially. So I want you guys to come up with your own ideas of a way that you can achieve change. So this could be a boycott, it could be a peaceful march, it could be attending a city council meeting. And then while they're doing this, I will also walk through the desks. I will take a look at how the kids are understanding the material based on the answers that they're giving. And then after this, I would randomly pick some groups that would want to either volunteer or just pick them randomly to share what they've come up with. And then I would do my closure. So why does this matter? Why was the bus boycott important? So this was considered the beginning of the civil rights movement. It was the first of many protests that led to different civil rights legislation being passed. It was also the first successful nonviolent protest of this era. So it showed that nonviolent protests could achieve change, that this was an approach that could lead to social change, or changes in the law. And it also led to a series of nonviolent protests that would go on throughout the rest of the 1960s, as we will get into in our next couple lessons. And lastly, this launched MLK Star as a prominent civil rights leader. This was the first major peaceful protest that he was able to organize. And as we'll see, he goes on to do many more of these, and he is one of the most well-known figures of this era. Okay, so to finish up today, I want you guys to either take out a piece of paper or I will provide paper for you, and we're going to do 3, 2, 1. So I want you guys to write down 3 things that you learned, 2 things that you found interesting, and 1 question that you still have. So while the kids do this, I will walk around again. If their question is something that I can answer, then I will do that. I will let them do this for a couple minutes, then I will collect them. And this will give me a chance to see what stood out to the students, what was something that they took away from this, and if there was a pattern in the questions that they had, if there was something that they didn't seem to be understanding that I could go over more, or if they wanted me to go more in depth about something, this is an opportunity for me to kind of see where they're at. Right? And then after I would collect these, I would give them homework. So for their independent practice, they would choose one of the following journal prompts. So they would either choose, was there a time that you stood up for something you believed in, or a time that you witnessed someone else do this? Describe what happened, and how did this promote social change? And then I would say the other one is, describe a time when you experienced discrimination. Did you respond? Why or why not? And my goal with this is to kind of get the kids to kind of go back into the mindset of what these people during the bus boycott were thinking, how they were feeling, if they can relate to that, just kind of a way that they can connect and engage more with the lesson. Okay, and that would be the end.